is draft Local Government Exclusion of Non-Commercial Considerations England Order 2026.
Thank you. I call the Minister to move the motion. Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everyone. I beg to move the committee considers the Local Government Exclusion of Non-Commercial Considerations England Order 2026. This order has a simple but important purpose: to put power, opportunity and to keep resources in the hands of local communities and local businesses. It will ensure that local authorities, parish councils, fire, waste and national park authorities in England can now reserve contracts worth cumulatively around £1 billion a year to UK-based suppliers or to suppliers based in their local community. It will boost SMEs and voluntary groups by ensuring they have better chance of benefiting from local procurement, and it will cut red tape and simplify contracting regimes. It is also proof that this government is using every lever at its disposal to ensure public procurement drives growth and opportunity in every part of the country. So the order before us disapplies section 17(5)(e) of the 1988 Local Government Act in specific and carefully defined areas. It does so to enable local authorities in England to reserve public procurement competitions for below threshold contracts to suppliers based either in the UK or the local area. Below threshold contracts, I should remind the committee, are contracts that are valued below the financial thresholds set out in the Procurement Act 2023. That is approximately £207,000 for goods and services and £5.2 million for works. Now, these may be considered lower value contracts, but they matter enormously to local businesses and for supporting local jobs. Indeed, last year, these contracts accounted for over £1 billion of spend and almost two-thirds of the number of contracts awarded by sub-central authorities. But currently, local authorities are prevented from awarding below-threshold procurements on the basis of supplier location. So that means a local authority in, for example, the great city of Brighton and Hove will be unable to reserve procurements for local companies, even if doing so would boost local jobs, tap into local expertise, and still deliver comparable value for taxpayer money. This government believes that should change, and that central and local government should not be agnostic about where public contracts are awarded, where jobs are created, or where resources are concentrated. So it's important to note this order is optional. Local authorities can decide whether these powers will benefit their communities and deliver better procurement opportunities. But we believe, Mr. Chair, that local government authorities should have this freedom if they wish to use so, and we know from the feedback we've had that many are very keen to do so. The order also seeks to boost transparency in local procurement. When authorities use this power, they will have to advertise the opportunity and clearly state in their advertisement which area the competition is reserved to. Suppliers will therefore know upfront whether they're going to be eligible, and the public can see how and if local authorities are using this power. In terms of geographic scope, the order applies only to England. The devolved governments are aware of the order. We have been working with them and keeping abreast of developments. Of course, it's a matter for them if they wish to implement a similar policy, but we are happy to support on that. Two further points to emphasise. First, the order gives flexibility to local authorities to define the local area that will apply to a reserved procurement. This could be reserved for their own specific area, for example, Brighton and Hove Council, or it could be extended to include neighbouring counties or neighbouring London boroughs. Now, this additional flexibility reflected feedback we had from local authorities, actually building on a consultation the previous government carried on, and we think better reflects the reality of how local government operates and how local government can support jobs and services in its area. Second, this order can only be applied on geographic basis and not on political grounds. Section 17 of the Local Government Act 1988, which, as I say, this order applies to, was enacted to prevent politically motivated boycotts of foreign countries through procurement. These safeguards are fully maintained by this order, and the order simply disapplies Section 17(5)(e), the geographic location provision, in two specific circumstances: for UK-wide reservation or for local area reservation, and it is only in relation to local thresholds. All other Section 17 provisions regarding political affiliation, etc., remain in full force. Once again, this builds on the work that the previous government had done in this space. Before bringing the legislation forward today, we listened and worked carefully with local authorities who have been overwhelmingly supportive. Indeed, many have been asking for this power for years. There's also strong support from the Federation of Small Businesses, who've described this as, and I quote, exactly the kind of practical reform we have long called for. Statutory guidance has also been published to support the implementation, which we have worked in consultation with the LGA. And I should also emphasise, of course, the previous government consulted on similar proposals in 2023, and we are standing on the shoulders of the Procurement Act here, so I hope there will be a degree of cross-party consensus. In conclusion, Chair, this order reflects the calls of local authorities, small businesses and communities. Built on the work of the 2023 Act, it will provide the tools for local authorities to keep around £1 billion in their local communities, and with the prospect of much more to come. It also underlines the government's commitment to ensure procurement is a lever for jobs, growth and opportunity across the country. And with that, I beg to move.
Thank you. The question is that the committee has considered the draft local government exclusion of non-commercial considerations England Order Act 2026. I call the opposition spokesperson, David Simmons.
It's the down a pleasure to serve with you in the chair this afternoon. The opposition is supportive of the direction of travel outlined in this SI, and we don't propose to divide the committee. I have a couple of questions which I would like to put to the Minister, but as he's clearly outlined, the provisions build on the principles that were outlined in the Localism Act, in the Social Value Act, to enable local authority procurement to be used more flexibly to support local economies. It would be helpful if the Minister could perhaps just set out a little more the consideration the government has given to previous debates and legislation on the issue of boycotts, divestment and sanctions. He touched on that in his introduction. I think it might be helpful for the record just for that real clarity about how this proposed statutory instrument ensures that the principles which were agreed cross-party are continuing to be enshrined in procurement rules that local authorities have to follow. It would be helpful if the Minister could set out, perhaps in a little more detail, how, given the government's English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which is making its way through Parliament at the moment, envisages widespread reorganisation. The regulations will be either updated or are sufficiently flexible to enable the new combined authorities and multiples of those combined authorities to work together. There are already good examples, such as here in London, where trading standards is delivered under a central contract operated by the Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea for all of the 33 London local authorities, where you have things like the Kent Commercial Framework, that's an existing established commercial procurement process that multiple different local authorities use, to ensure that there is nothing here that would frustrate existing effective commercial arrangements that are also supportive of local economies. I'd be grateful if the Minister could set out whether the government is giving any consideration, following the greater flexibility that we have around procurement following the EU exit, to implementing the EU model of service concessions in the procurement of local authorities, which always gave a much greater degree of flexibility around procurement in respect of statutory functions. That is a provision which has never historically been open to local authorities here in the United Kingdom, but is used as a means of achieving many of the same ends that this instrument seeks to work towards, but without anything like the level of bureaucracy that is inherent in some of these multi-stage competitive tendering processes. And then finally, a question to the Minister. He's, and I totally agree with him, outlined the importance of this for local authorities in implementing measures that support local economies, key industries in their area. Could he set out for the benefit of the committee what, if any, follow-up there's going to be? As we know in the past, one of the challenges for government is that although greater flexibility has been introduced, the take-up, the use of that flexibility has been in practice extremely limited. So what measures are there going to be for the impact that this has to ensure that it is operating in the way that it is intended to, and that if it isn't, to prompt a reconsideration, a re-examination of the opportunities for this kind of approach, but on a greater and more productive scale in the future. Those comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and can I thank the gentleman for those comments and the spirit they're intended in. I think there's good agreement on this. Just to take the 4 points. Firstly, on boycotts and divestment. As I said, the safeguards there are essential They are fully maintained by this order. We have worked closely as in building with the work the previous government did on this to ensure that is the case. The order only disapplies the geographic location provision, and it's in two very narrow areas. Broader protections remain in place, and there is no change to that. As he says, the Procurement Act also prevents contracting authorities from discriminating against suppliers entitled to international agreements. That, of course, includes Israel, includes any WTO signatory. That means boycotts would be unlawful under that Act, and it remains completely unlawful. Councils could not do that under that. This is a very narrow and specific bit, but it's a very well-made point. It is one I've looked at closely as we've gone through this, because I support that point he's making. Secondly, on local government reorganisation, obviously when the bill goes through and reorganisation happens, obviously the geographic areas will need to be updated in this, and we will work on that. I will, if it's okay with him, I will ask my colleagues in MHCLG to write to him and follow up on that specific point about how that will go through, but that has been taken into account as we progress. On EU procurement and models, for my sins, he's going to be hearing a lot more from me about EU models and how we go about our new relationship with the EU, because I will be taking that bill through probably in the committee soon. So I say that isn't something that's the changes at the EU and how we're going to deliver that aren't reflected in this order at the moment. You'll be hearing a lot more about how we do change some of that as the EU bill goes through. Again, I will follow up with him on that. And his final point was about how we follow up with local governments to ensure they take up these powers and use them. As I say, this is an optional power. There's no compulsion for local government to do so, although given the level of consultation we've done, as I say, with successive governments, I'm optimistic that will happen. We are working with the LGA, Local Government Association, to try and raise awareness and to drive through implementation. Our department with MHCLG will be writing to local authorities as well, informing them of the powers, informing them of how they can apply them, and offering support to do so. So we're offering support without compulsion, if that makes sense, but we will continue to monitor it and try and drive it through. I hope that responds to points raised. As I say, this is giving a power that local authorities have been asking for a long time. I think will make a big difference to businesses across the country. I want to thank everyone who's worked on this in successive governments, including from MHCLG, the Cabinet Office and the LGA for their support, and I hope all members will join me in supporting it. Thank you.
The question is that the committee has considered the draft local government exclusion of non-commercial considerations England Order 2026. As many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. Thank you very much for a very consensual take-our take.
Look at that.